Shila Gurudev ki jai. Nityal Vishnu Vishnu Parashitara Shmad Shila Bhakti-Vedanta Vaiṣṇavas Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nityal Vishnu Vishnu Parashitara Shmad Shila Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shila Prabhupada ki jai. Nityal Vishnu Vishnu Parashitara Shmad Shila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nityal Vishnu Vishnu Parashitara Shmad Shila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Nityal Pṛthu Mahārāja Shila Gokṣaras Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nityal Vaiṣṇavas Nityal Shila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nityal Vaiṣṇavas Sarvabhauma Shila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupano Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Sharda Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gopal Shada Vrinda ki jai. Nama Acharya Shila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Vraja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Sarva Abhishwabrata Giriraj Maharaj ki jai. Shri Radhakund Shamakund ki jai. Shri Mona Devi Ganga Devi ki jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya ki jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Samagat Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Radhikaya Priyatmane Shri Śrīmad-Bhakti Vedanta Narayaniti Namine. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvishe Namaha. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarbhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Pravrajantam Anupetam Apeta Kritam Tvaipayano Virahakatara Ajuhava Putreti Tanmayataya Taravo Bhine Dustang Sarvabhuta Hridayam Munimanatosmi. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet. Shrinvatang Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridantasta Yabhadrani Vidhunoti Suritsatam. Nashta Prayeshvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Tavai Vasmi Na Jivami Tvaya Vina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayamang Charanantikam. Bhaktya Vihina Aparada Lakshai Kshiptashtakamadhitaranga Madhe Kripa Mai Tvam Sharanam Prapanna Vrinde Namaste Charanarvindam. Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare. All right. So yesterday we read, well, let's just go through this chapter until the citizens welcome Pṛthu Mahārāja. It is a description of the well-decorated city, the grand welcoming ceremony, and Pṛthu Mahārāja's reciprocation. Pṛthu's glorious activities and final destination. Vidura requests to hear more about Pṛthu's acts. Then Maitreya Rishi describes Pṛthu's role, his bodily features, and speech. Describes Pṛthu's enjoyment, unrivaled rule, authority over everyone except the brāhmaṇas and Vaiṣṇavas. Pṛthu initiates a sacrifice, and he just wears deer skin, and it talks about all his auspicious bodily features. Then Pṛthu addresses the assembly. And what were the 6 qualities of his speech? Let's see. Was it 6 qualities? No, it was 7. 7 qualities. His speech was beautiful, flowery, like full of metaphors, clearly understandable, pleasing to hear. It was delightful. It was meaningful and grave, without any doubt, and it was faultless, and it was for the benefit of everyone. And wait, what are we reading today again? Let me just check. Dandavat Pranams Gargaraji, Madhavi Didi, Indira Mataji, Saheli Didi, and Shiv Shankar. Haribol. We're reading from 31 to 38. Okay, so we're only doing 8 verses today. Probably going to be some very long purports. So Pṛthu Mahārāja said, O assembled devotees, good fortune upon you. An inquisitive person should present his carefully considered principles in the presence of devotees for approval and to reach a conclusion. The devotees might say, you are the king and we should just worship you. Pṛthu Mahārāja says, I have been appointed king by the Lord's grace in order to rule the citizens, to protect them, and to employ them according to their social order. When I execute my duties as king, and also when the Lord is pleased, I will be able to achieve desirable destinations which have been described by experts in Vedic knowledge. Any king who simply exacts taxes from the citizens without teaching them the respective varnashram duties is liable to suffer the sins of the citizens and to lose his good fortune of wealth and power. Therefore, for the welfare of your king after his death, execute your varnashram duties properly, without envy, and always think of the Lord. In doing so, you will bestow mercy upon me. I request all the pure demigods, forefathers, and sages to approve my proposal. For after death, the result of an action is equally shared by its doer, its director, and its approver. Note, if a king is elevated to heavenly planets... One second. Okay. If a king is elevated to the heavenly planets, the citizens who cooperated by approving his methods are also elevated with him. And so... the people might say, but how can you institute the worship of the Lord? For your father Vain denied his existence. Pṛthu Mahārāja says, according to the authoritative statements of Shastra, there must be a supreme authority. This can be observed by the presence of beautiful and powerful bodies in this life by sense perception, and in the next by scriptures. Notes, the cause of different bodies is not karma, because actions are material and unconscious, not the demigods, since they are not independent, but the Supreme Lord, because he has the ability to do, not to do, or do differently. Whoa, anyhow. Okay. Who are those authorities who believe this point of view? Confirming authorities are the Vedas and the great persons like Manu, Uttanapad, Dhruva, Priyavrata, Anga, Brahma, Shiva, Prahlad, and Bali, but not the
not the abominable persons like Vaiṣṇa who are bewildered about Dharma. They also agree that the only bestower of the benedictions of Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha and Svarga is the Supreme Lord. Gadabrita. Devotional service cleanses one's mind. By one's inclination to serve the Lord's feet, the contamination in the mind acquired over innumerable births is immediately cleansed, and day by day one's spiritual inclination increases. It is like purification done by the Ganges water, emanating from the Lord's toe. A devotee doesn't surrender to material life again. A devotee whose mind has been cleansed of unlimited contamination, who has developed detachment and is strengthened by bhakti yoga, has realized the Lord's beauty, who has taken shelter of the Lord's feet again, does not surrender to material life full of suffering. Link. The citizens might have asked, since we are drowned in our household activities, how can we worship the Lord with pure bhakti? Pṛthu then advised him to do karma-miśra-bhakti. Oh, this is where we're up to. Oops. Oh my God. I'm so spaced out. Okay. 31. Although abominable persons like my father, Vaiṣṇa, the grandson of death personified, are bewildered on the path of religion, all the great personalities like those mentioned in the world agree that only person. Okay. Yat pada seva bhiruchis tapasvinam ashesha janmo pachitam alam dhiya sadyakshinotan vaham edati sati yata padangushta vinisrita sarit. By the inclination to serve the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, suffering humanity could immediately cleanse the dirt which has accumulated in their minds doing innumerable births. Like the Ganges water, which emanates from the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord, such a process immediately cleanses the mind, and thus spiritual or Krishna consciousness gradually increases. That's by the inclination to serve the lotus feet of the Lord. Krishna Seva Vasana, which is the seed of the creeper of bhakti, which Gurudev implants in the heart of the disciple. And from that seed comes Shraddha, like that. Okay, purports by Srila Prabhupada. In India, one can actually see that a person who takes a bath in the Ganges water daily is almost free from all kinds of diseases. A very respectable Brahmin in Kolkata never took a doctor's medicine. Even though he sometimes felt sick, he would not accept medicine from the physician, but would simply drink Ganges water, and he was always cured within a very short time. The glories of Ganges water are known to Indians and to ourselves also. The river Ganges flows by Kolkata. Sometimes within the water there are many stools and other dirty things which are washed away from neighboring mills and factories. But still, thousands of men take baths in the Ganges water, and they are very healthy as well as spiritually inclined. That is the effect of Ganges water. The Ganges is glorified because it emanates from the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord. Yeah, actually, I watched a whole documentary on the Ganges last year, and it's scientists are amazed, actually. Like they've done, because it would be, in one place it'd be very contaminated, there's so much sewage and stuff, but then just a little further up, the water would self-correct itself. It's nothing seen anywhere else in the world. It's like just the Ganges, which purifies itself. Anyhow. Similarly, if one takes to the service of the lotus feet of the Lord, or takes to Krishna consciousness, he is immediately cleansed of the many dirty things which have accumulated in his innumerable births. We have seen that in spite of the very black record of their past lives, persons who take to Krishna consciousness become perfectly cleansed of all dirty things and make spiritual progress very swiftly. Therefore, Pṛthu Mahārāja advises that without the benediction of the Supreme Lord, one cannot make advancement, either in so-called morality, economic development, or sense gratification. One should therefore take to the service of the Lord, or Krishna consciousness, and thus very soon become a perfect man, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Kshiptaram bhavati dharmatma shashvat shantim nigacchati. Being a responsible king, Pṛthu Mahārāja recommends that everyone take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus be immediately purified. Lord Shri Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita that simply by surrendering unto him, one is immediately relieved of all sinful reactions. As Krishna takes away all the sinful reactions of a person immediately upon his surrender unto him, similarly, the external manifestation of Krishna, the representative of Krishna who acts as the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, takes all the resultant actions of the sinful life of the disciple immediately after the disciple's initiation. Wow. Is that saying Maya takes away... Oh, the external manifestation of Krishna, that refers to Sri Guru, I think. Yeah. Okay. Thus, if the disciple follows the principles instructed by the spiritual master, he remains purified and is not contaminated by the material infection. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore stated that the spiritual master who plays the part of Krishna's representative has to consume all the sinful reactions of his disciple. Sometimes a spiritual master takes the risk of being overwhelmed by the sinful reactions of the disciples and undergoes a sort of tribulation due to their acceptance. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore advised that one should not accept many disciples. Wow. That is heavy. That's the mercy of Guru, that they're willing to consume all the sinful reactions of a disciple. Of course, topmost Uttam Mahabhagavat Guru doesn't have to suffer through all the sinful reactions, but anyways, any Guru, that's what they're agreeing to when they initiate somebody. Vinirduta shesha manomala pumana sangha vijnana vishesha viryavan yarangrimule krita ketana punar na sangsritim klesha vaham prapadyate. I'm going to share this one actually. I'll do that later though. When a devotee takes shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is completely cleansed of all misunderstanding or mental speculation, and he manifests renunciation. This is possible only when one is strengthened by practicing bhakti yoga. Once having taken shelter at the root of the lotus feet of the Lord, a devotee never comes back to this material existence, which is full of the threefold miseries. Purport. As stated by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shikshashtaka instructions, by chanting of the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, or by the process of hearing and chanting of the glories of the Lord, one's mind is gradually cleansed of all dirt. Due to our material association since time immemorial, we have accumulated heaps of dirty things in our minds. The total effect of this takes place when a living entity identifies himself with his body and is thus entrapped by the stringent laws of material nature and put into the cycle of repeated birth and death under the false impression of bodily identification. When one is strengthened by practicing bhakti yoga, his mind is cleansed of this misunderstanding, and he is no longer interested in material existence or in sense gratification. Bhakti, or devotional service, is characterized by vairagya and gyan. Gyan refers to understanding that one is not his body, and vairagya means disinterest in sense gratification. These two primary principles of separation from material bondage can be realized on the strength of bhakti yoga. It is in bhakti yoga, but these are just the automatic effects of bhakti yoga. Thus, when a devotee is fixed in the loving service of the lotus feet of the Lord, he will never come back to this material existence after quitting his body, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita by the Lord. Takta deham punarjanma naiti mam eti sorjuna. In this verse, the word vigyan is specifically important. Gyan, the knowledge of the spiritual identity that one attains when he does not consider himself to be the body, is explained in Bhagavad Gita as Brahma-bhuta, the revival of spiritual realization. In the conditioned state of material existence, one cannot be spiritually realized because he identifies himself materially. The understanding of the distinction between material existence and spiritual existence is called Gyan. That's the understanding of the distinction between material existence and spiritual existence. After coming to the platform of Gyan, or the Brahma-bhuta stage, one ultimately comes to devotional service, in which he completely understands his own position and the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's called Sambandha, right? This understanding is explained here as Vigyan Vishesh. The Lord says, therefore, that knowledge of him is Vigyan, science. Yeah, the way to say science in Hindi or Bengali is Vigyan. In other words, when one is strengthened by scientific knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his position of liberation is guaranteed. In Bhagavad Gita 9.2, the science of devotional service is described as pratyakshvagamam dharmyam, direct understanding of the principles of religion by realization. By practicing bhakti yoga, one can directly perceive his advancement in spiritual life. In other practices like karma yoga, jnana yoga, and dhyana yoga, one may not be confident about his progress. But in bhakti yoga, one can become directly aware of his progress in spiritual life, just as a person who eats can understand that his hunger is satisfied. Our false appetite for enjoyment and lordship of the material world is due to a prominence of passion and ignorance. By bhakti yoga, these two qualities are diminished, and one becomes situated in the mode of goodness. Gradually surpassing the mode of goodness, one is situated in pure goodness, which is not contaminated by the material qualities. When thus situated, a devotee no longer has any doubts. He knows that he will not come back to this material world. Tameva yuyam bhajatatma vrittibir mano vacha kaya gunai sakarmabhi amayina kama dugangri pankajam yatadikara vastitartha siddhaya. Pṛthu Mahārāja advised his citizens, engaging your minds, your words, your bodies, and the results of your occupational duties, and being always open-minded, you should all render devotional service to the Lord. According to your abilities and the occupations in which you are situated, you should engage your service at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead with full confidence and without reservation. Then you will surely be successful in achieving the final objective in your lives. Purport. As stated in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Swakarmanatam Abhyarchya, one has to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead by one's occupational duties. This necessitates accepting the principle of 4 varnas and 4 ashrams. Pṛthu Mahārāja therefore says, Gunai swakarmabhi. This phrase is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Chatur varnya maya shrishtam guna karma vibhagasha. The 4 castes, the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras, are created by the Supreme Personality of Godhead according to the material modes of nature and the particular duties discharged in those modes. A person who is situated in the mode of goodness is certainly more intelligent than others. Therefore, he can practice the brahminical activities, namely speaking the truth, controlling the senses, controlling the mind, always remaining clean, practicing tolerance, having full knowledge about one's identity, and understanding devotional service. A person in the mode of goodness can practice all these brahminical activities. In this way, he engages himself in the loving service of the Lord as an actual Brahmin. His aim to achieve the final interest of life is attained. I forgot the word if. If he engages himself in the loving service of the Lord as an actual Brahmin, his aim to achieve his final interest of life is attained. Similarly, the Kshatriya's duties are to give protection to the citizens, to give all his possessions in charity, to be strictly Vedic in the management of state affairs, and to be unafraid to fight whenever there is an attack by enemies. In this way, a Kshatriya can satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his occupational duties. Similarly, a Vaishya can satisfy the Supreme Godhead by properly executing his occupational duties, engaging himself in producing foodstuffs, giving protection to cows, and trading if necessary when there is an excess of agricultural production. Similarly, because the Shudras do not have ample intelligence, they should simply engage as workers to serve the higher statuses of social life. Oops, let me make this full screen. Everyone's aim should be to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Where is it? The Supreme Personality of Godhead by engaging his mind in thinking always of Krishna, his words in always offering prayers to the Lord, or preaching about the glories of the Lord, and his body in executing the service required to satisfy the Lord. As there are 4 divisions within our body, the head, the arms, the belly, and the legs, similarly, human society, taken as a whole, is divided into 4 classes of men according to their material qualities and occupational duties. Thus, the Brahminical or intelligent men have to execute the duty of the head. The Kshatriyas must fulfill the duty of the arms. The Vaishya class must fulfill the duty of the belly, and the Shudras must fulfill the duty of the legs. In executing the prescribed duties of life, no one is higher or lower. There are such divisions of higher and lower, but since there is actually a common interest to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there are no distinctions between them. The question may be raised that since the Lord is supposed to be worshipped by the great demigods, like Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and others, how can an ordinary human being on this planet serve him? This is clearly explained by Pṛthu Mahārāja by the use of the words yatādhikar, according to one's ability. If one sincerely executes his occupational duty, that will be sufficient. One does not need to become like Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Indra, Lord Chaitanya, or Ramanujacharya, whose capabilities are certainly far above ours. Even a Sudra, who is in the lowest stage of life according to the material qualities, can achieve the same success. This is really hopeful. Anyone can become successful in devotional service provided he displays no duplicity. That's the key. Oh wow, I really like this. Okay. It is explained here that one must be very frank and open-minded. Amayina. To be situated in a lower status of life is not a disqualification for success in devotional service. Ooh, that's good also. The only qualification is that whether one is a Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, he must be open, frank, and free from reservations. Then, by performing his particular occupational duty under the guidance of a proper spiritual master, he can achieve the highest success in life. That's also good. As confirmed by the Lord himself, Striyo Vaishyas tata Shudras tepi yanti param gatim. Bhagavad Gita 9:32. It does not matter what one is, whether a Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Sudra, or a degraded woman. If one engages himself seriously in devotional service, working with the body, mind, and intelligence, he is sure to be successful in going back home, back to Godhead. The Lord's lotus feet are described here as kama dughangri pankajam, because they have all power to fulfill the desires of everyone. A devotee is happy even in this life, because although in material existence we have many needs, all his material needs are satisfied. And when he at last quits his body, he goes back home, back to Godhead, without a doubt. One second. There, just wanted to say that. All right. Asavihi ihadneka guna tvara pritagvida dravya guna kriyoktivi sampadyaterta shayalinga namabhir Vishuddha Vijnana Ghana Swarupata. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental and not contaminated by this material world. But although he is concentrated spirit soul without material variety, for the benefit of the conditioned soul, he nevertheless accepts different types of sacrifice performed with various material elements, rituals, and mantras, and offered to the demigods under different names according to the interests and purposes of the performers. Okay. Purport. For material prosperity, there are recommendations in the Vedas for various types of yajna, sacrifice. In Bhagavad Gita 3.10, it is confirmed that Lord Brahma created all living entities, including human beings and demigods, and advised them to perform yajna according to their material desires. Saha yajna prajashishtva. These performances are called yajnas because their ultimate goal is to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. The purpose of performing yajnas is to get material benefit. But because the aim is to simultaneously satisfy the Supreme Lord, such yajnas have been recommended in the Vedas. Such performances are, of course, known as karma-kanda, or material activities. And all material activities are certainly contaminated by the three modes of material nature. Generally, the karma-kanda ritualistic ceremonies are performed in the mode of passion, yet the conditioned souls, both human beings and demigods, are obliged to perform these yajnas, because without them, one cannot be happy at all. Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur comments that these karma-kanda ritualistic ceremonies, although contaminated, contain touches of devotional service, because whenever there is a performance of any yajna, Lord Vishnu is given a central position. This is very important because even a little endeavor to please Lord Vishnu is bhakti and is of great value. A tinge of bhakti purifies the material nature of the performances, which by devotional service gradually come to the transcendental position. Therefore, although such yajnas are superficially material activities, the results are transcendental. Such yajnas as Surya Yajna, Indra Yajna, and Chandra Yajna are performed in the names of the demigods, but these demigods are bodily parts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The demigods cannot accept sacrificial offerings for themselves, but they can accept them for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just as the departmental tax collector of a government cannot collect taxes for his personal account, but can realize them for the government. Any yajna performed with this complete knowledge and understanding is described in Bhagavad Gita as brahmarpanam, or a sacrifice offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since no one but the Supreme Lord can enjoy the results of sacrifice, the Lord says that He is the actual enjoyer of all sacrifices. Bhoktaram yagyatapasam sarva loka maheshwaram. Sacrifices should be performed with this view in mind, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 4.24. Brahmarpanam brahmahavir brahmagno brahmanahutam brahmaiva tena gantavyam brahma karma samadhina. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. The performer of sacrifices must always keep in view that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas are meant to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vishnur aradhate panta, Vishnu Purana 3.8.9. Anything material or spiritual done for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord is understood to be an actual yajna, and by performing such yajnas, one gets liberation from material bondage. The direct method of getting liberation from material bondage is devotional service, comprising of the 9 following methods. Shravanam kirtanam Vishnu, smaranam padasevanam, archanam vandanam dasyam, sakyam atma nivedanam. This 9-fold process is described in this verse as Vishuddha Vijnana Ghana, or satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly by transcendental knowledge concentrated on the form of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. This is the best method for satisfying the Supreme Lord. One who cannot take to this direct process, however, should take the indirect process of performing yajnas for the satisfaction of Vishnu, or yajna. Vishnu is therefore called Yagyapati. Shriyapatim Yagyapatim Jagatpatim. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 2:9-15. The Supreme Personality of Godhead's deep scientific knowledge is concentrated to the supreme point. For example, medical science knows some things superficially, but doctors do not know exactly how things happen in the body. Lord Krishna, however, knows everything in detail. Therefore, his knowledge is Vijnana Ghana, because it does not have any of the defects of material science. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Vishuddha Vijnana Ghana, concentrated transcendental knowledge. Therefore, even though he accepts karma-kandiya materialistic yagyas, he always remains in a transcendental position. Therefore, the mention of Aneka Gun refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead's many transcendental qualities, for he is not affected by the material qualities. The different kinds of material paraphernalia, or physical elements, are also gradually transformed into spiritual understanding, because ultimately there is no difference between material and spiritual qualities, for everything emanates from the Supreme Spirit. This is realized by a gradual process of realization and purification. One vivid example of this is Pṛthu Mahārāja, who took to meditation in the forest to achieve material benefit, but ultimately became spiritually advanced and did not want any benediction for material profit. He was simply satisfied with the association of the Supreme Lord. Ashray means determination. Generally, a conditioned soul has the determination for material profit, but when these desires for material profit are satisfied through the performance of yajna, one gradually achieves the spiritual platform. Then his life becomes perfect. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 2:3-10 therefore recommends, Akama sarvakamo va mokshakama udharadhi tivrena bhakti-yogena yajita purusham param. Everyone, whether akam, a devotee who has no material desires, sarvakam, a karmi who has lots of material desires, or mokshakam, a jnani or yogi who desires liberation, is encouraged to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the direct method of devotional service. In this way, one can get both material and spiritual profits simultaneously. Pradhana kala shaya dharma sangrahe sharira esha pratipadya chetanam kriya phalatvena vibhur vibhavyate yata nalo darushutar gunatmaka. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is all-pervading, but he is also manifested in different types of body, which arise from a combination of material nature, time, desires, and occupational duties. Thus, different types of consciousness develop, just as fire, which is always basically the same, blazes in different ways according to the shape and dimension of firewood. Purport: the Supreme Personality of Godhead constantly lives with the individual soul as Paramatma. The individual soul has awareness in accord with his material body, which he attains by virtue of Prakriti, or material nature. The material ingredients are activated by the force of time, and thus the three material modes of nature are manifested. According to his association with the three modes of nature, the living entity develops a particular type of body. In animal life, the material mode of ignorance is so prominent that there is very little chance of realizing the Paramatma, who is also present within the heart of the animal. But in the human form of life, because of developed consciousness, Chetanam, one can be transferred from ignorance and passion to goodness by the results of his activities, Kriya Phalatvena. A human being is therefore advised to associate with spiritually advanced personalities. The Vedas give the direction, Tadvigyanartam sagurum eva bhigachet. Mundaka Upanishad. Tadvigyanartam sagurum eva bhigachet samit pani shrotriyam brāhmanishtam. To understand these things properly, one must humbly approach with firewood in hand a spiritual master who is learned in the Vedas and firmly devoted to the absolute truth. In order to reach the perfection of life, or to understand the real constitutional position of the living entity, one must approach the spiritual master. Gurum eva bhikachet. One must. It is not optional. It is imperative that one approach the spiritual master, for by such association, one proportionately develops his consciousness towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The highest perfection of such consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. According to the body given by Prakriti, or nature, one's consciousness is present according to the development of consciousness. According to the development of consciousness, one's activities are performed, and according to the purity of such activities, one realizes the Supreme Personality of Godhead who is present in everyone's heart. Okay, so there's a progression. According to the body given by Prakriti, one's consciousness is present. According to the development of consciousness, one's activities are performed. According to the purity of such activities, one realizes the Supreme Personality of Godhead who is present in everyone's heart. Okay, so I didn't really capture that, so that's why I read it. The example given herein is very appropriate. Fire is always the same, but according to the size of the fuel or burning wood, the fire appears to be straight, curved, small, big, etc. According to the development of consciousness, God realization is present. In the human form of life, it is recommended, therefore, that one undergo the different types of penances and austerities described in Bhagavad Gita: karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, and bhakti yoga. Like a staircase, yoga has different steps for reaching the topmost floor, and according to one's position upon the staircase, he is understood to be situated in karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, or bhakti yoga. Of course, bhakti yoga is the topmost step on the staircase of realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, according to one's development and consciousness, one realizes his spiritual identity, and thus when one's existential position is purified fully, he becomes situated in Brahmananda, which is ultimately unlimited. Therefore, the Sankirtan movement contributed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Lord Chaitanya is the direct and easiest process for coming to the purest form of consciousness, Krishna consciousness, the platform on which the Supreme Personality is fully realized. Directions for performing different types of yagyas are specifically arranged for the highest realization of the Supreme Lord, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita by the Lord himself. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tang sataiva bhajamyaham. Bhagavad Gita 4:11. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is realized according to the proportion of one's surrender. Full surrender, however, occurs when a man is perfectly in knowledge. Full surrender, however, occurs when a man is perfectly in knowledge. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavang mam prapadyate. So whatever surrender we do when we're not perfectly in knowledge is not actual full surrender. It's more sentimentality. I'm not sure. Sentimentality might be too harsh a word, but yeah. Aho mamami vitaranti anugraham harim gurum yagya bhujam adishwaram sudharma yogena yajanti mamaka nirantaram kokshoni tale drida vrata. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the master and enjoyer of the results of all sacrifices, and he is the supreme spiritual master as well. All of you citizens on the surface of the globe who have a relationship with me and are worshipping him by dint of your occupational duties are bestowing your mercy upon me. Therefore, O my citizens, I thank you. It's a nice... Purport. Maharaj Pṛthu's advice to his citizens to take to devotional service is now concluded in two ways. He has repeatedly advised persons who are neophytes to engage themselves in devotional service according to the capacities of the different orders of social and spiritual life. But here he specifically thanks those who already engaged in such devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is actually the enjoyer of all sacrificial performances, and who is also the supreme teacher as Antaryami, or Paramatma, the Chaitya Guru in the heart. There is specifically mention of the word Guru, which indicates the Supreme Personality as Chaita Guru. Yes, the Guru in the heart. The Supreme Godhead in his Paramatma feature is present in everyone's heart, and he is always trying to induce the individual soul to surrender unto him and to engage in devotional service. Therefore, he is the original spiritual master. He manifests himself as spiritual master both internally and externally to help the conditioned soul in both ways. Therefore, he has been mentioned herein as Gurum. It appears, however, that in the time of Maharaj Pṛthu, all the people on the surface of the globe were his subjects. Most of them, in fact almost all of them, were engaged in devotional service. Therefore he thanked them in a humble way for engaging in devotional service and thus bestowing their mercy upon him. In other words, in a state where the citizens and the head of state are engaged in devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they help one another and are mutually benefited. Majatu teja prabhavin mahardivish titikshaya tapasa vidyayacha dedipyamane jitadevatanam kule swayam raja kuladvijanam. The Brahmaṇas and Vaiṣṇavas are personally glorified by their characteristic powers of tolerance, penance, knowledge, and education. By dint of all these spiritual assets, Vaiṣṇavas are more powerful than royalty. It is therefore advised that the princely order not exhibit its material prowess before these two communities and should avoid offending them. Purport. Pṛthu Mahārāja has explained in the previous verse the importance of devotional service for both the rulers and the citizens of the state. Now he explains how one can be steadily fixed in devotional service. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, while instructing Srila Rupa Goswami, has compared the devotional service of the Lord with a creeper. A creeper has a feeble stem and requires the support of another tree to grow. And while growing, it requires sufficient protection so that it may not be lost. While describing the system of protection for the creeper of devotional service, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has especially stressed protection from offenses unto the lotus feet of Vaiṣṇavas. Such offenses are called Vaiṣṇava aparad. Aparad means offense. If one commits Vaiṣṇava aparads, all of his progress in devotional service will be checked. Even though one is very much advanced in devotional service, if he commits offenses at the feet of a Vaishnava, his advancement is all spoiled. In the Shastras it is found that a very great yogi, Durvasa Muni, committed a Vaishnava aparad, and thus for 1 full year he had to travel all over the universe, even to Vaikuntha Loka, to defend himself from the offense. Oh, cool. We're going to read about this tonight in The Heart of Krishna. Every night we're reading The Heart of Krishna by Srila Bhakti Puri Goswami Maharaj, and tonight is this story. At last, even when Durvasa Rishi approached the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Vaikuntha, he was refused protection. Therefore, one should be very careful about committing offenses at the feet of a Vaishnava. The most grievous type of Vaishnava aparad is called Gurva aparad, which refers to offenses at the lotus feet of the spiritual master. In the chanting of the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this Gurva aparad is considered the most grievous offense. Gurur avyagya shruti shastra nindanam, from the Padma Puran. Although the 10 offenses committed against the chanting of the holy name, the first offenses are disobedience of this. Although the 10 offenses committed against the. Oh, sorry. Did I say although? Among the 10 offenses committed against the holy name, the first offenses are disobedience of the spiritual master and blasphemy of the Vedic literature. The simple definition of Vaishnava is given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. A person who immediately reminds one of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is a Vaishnava. In this verse, both Vaishnavas and Brahmaṇas are mentioned. A Vaishnava is a learned Brahman, and is therefore designated as a Brahman Vaishnava, Brahman Pandit, or as a Vaishnava and Brahman. In other words, a Vaishnava is supposed to be a Brahman already. but a Brahman may not be a pure Vaishnava. When a person understands his pure identity, Brahmajanati, he immediately becomes a Brahman. In the Brahman stage, one's understanding of the absolute truth is mainly based on the impersonal view. When a Brahman, however, rises to the platform of personal understanding of the Supreme Godhead, he becomes a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava is transcendental even to a Brahman. In the material conception, the position of a Brahman is the highest in human society, but a Vaishnava is transcendental even to a Brahman. Both the Brahman and Vaishnava are spiritually advanced. A Brahman's qualifications are mentioned in Bhagavad Gita as truthfulness, mental equanimity, control of the senses, the power of tolerance, simplicity, knowledge of the absolute truth, firm faith in the scriptures, and practical application of the Brahminical qualities in life. In addition to all these qualifications, when one fully engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he becomes a Vaishnava. Pṛthu Mahārāja warns his citizens who are actually engaged in devotional service of the Lord to take care against offenses to the Brahmins and Vaishnavas. Offenses at their lotus feet are so destructive that even the descendants of Yadu, who were born in the family of Lord Krishna, were destroyed due to offenses at their feet. Wow. Even Krishna's direct family members were destroyed. The Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot tolerate any offense at the lotus feet of Brahmins and Vaishnavas. Sometimes, due to their powerful positions, princes or government servants neglect the position of Brahmins and Vaishnavas, not knowing that because of their offense, they will be ruined. Pramanya deva purusha puratano nityam harirya charana bhivandanat avapa lakshmim anapayinam yasho jagat pavitram chamahuttama grani. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ancient, eternal Godhead, who is foremost amongst all great personalities, obtains the opulence of his staunch reputation, which purifies the entire universe by worshipping the lotus feet of those Brahmins and Vaishnavas. Wow. That's a really bold thing to say. Purport. The Supreme Person is described herein as Brahmanya Dev. Brahmanya refers to the Brahmins, the Vaishnavas, or the Brahminical culture, and Deva means worshipable Lord. Therefore, unless one is on the transcendental platform of being a Vaishnava, or on the highest platform of material goodness as a Brahman, he cannot appreciate the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the lower stages of ignorance and passion, it is difficult to appreciate or understand the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the Lord is described herein as the worshipable deity for persons in Brahminical and Vaishnava culture. Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha Jagaditaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the prime protector of Brahminical culture and the cow. Without knowing and respecting these, Brahminical culture and the cow, one cannot realize the science of God, and without this knowledge, any welfare activities or humanitarian propaganda cannot be successful. The Lord is Purush, or the Supreme Enjoyer. Not only is He the Enjoyer when He appears as a manifested incarnation, but He is the Enjoyer since time immemorial, from the very beginning, Puranata, and eternally, Nityam, Yat Charana Bhivandanat. Pṛthu Mahārāja said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead attains this opulence. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself, He attains this opulence of eternal fame simply by worshipping the lotus feet of the Brahmins. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the Lord does not need to work to achieve material gain. Since He is perpetually supremely perfect, He does not need to obtain anything. But still, it is said that He obtained His opulences by worshipping the lotus feet of the Brahmins. These are His exemplary actions. When Lord Sri Krishna was in Dwarka, He offered His respects by bowing down at the lotus feet of Narad. When Sudama Vipra came to His house, Lord Krishna personally washed his feet and gave him a seat on His personal bed. Although he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna offered his respects to Maharaj Yudhishthira and Kunti. The Lord's exemplary behavior is to teach us. We should learn from his personal behavior how to give protection to the cow, how to cultivate Brahminical qualities, and how to respect the Brahmaṇas and the Vaiṣṇavas. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 3:21, Yad yad acharati shreshtas tatta reve tarod jana. If the leading personalities behave in a certain manner, others follow them automatically. Who can be more of a leading personality than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and whose behavior could be more exemplary? It is not that he needed to do all these things to acquire material gain, but all of these acts were performed just to teach us how to behave in this material world. Yeah, didn't we read yesterday that that in the royal assembly of, was it Yudhishthira Maharaj? Krishna took the job of washing all the feet of all the Brahman guests, all the sages. So, yeah. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is described herein as Mahatma Agrani. Within this material world, the Mahatmas, or great personalities, are Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, but he is above them all. Narayano Paro Vyaktat, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is in a transcendental position, above everything created within this material world. His opulence, his riches, his beauty, his wisdom, his knowledge, his renunciation, and his reputation are all Jagat Pavitram, universally purifying. The more we discuss his opulences, the more the universe becomes purer and purer. In the material world, the opulences possessed by a material person are never fixed. Today, one may be a very rich man, but tomorrow he may become poor. Today, one is very famous, but tomorrow he may be infamous. Materially obtained opulences are never fixed. But all six opulences perpetually exist in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not only in the spiritual world, but also in this material world. Lord Krishna's reputation is fixed, and his book of wisdom, Bhagavad Gita, is still honored. Everything pertaining to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternally existing. Okay, so that's our reading for today. Tomorrow we will finish this chapter. Let's see. Right? I think so. Oh, maybe not. Yeah, we will. So Pṛthu establishes the glories of the Brahmaṇas and Vaiṣṇavas, and then the citizens praise Pṛthu. That's all tomorrow. And then the day after tomorrow, we'll read about Pṛthu Mahārāja's meeting the 4 Kumaras. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol. Rup Manjari, you updated, is it the Tadvigyanartham verse? Sagurum Eva Bigachet? Yeah, that was a really nice purport, wasn't it, on that verse? Just looking through the comments. Ajita Devatanam. I was going to do Jadwani. Jai Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shishi Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai. Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju Ki Jai. Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtarashatashmad Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayana Goswami Maharaj Srila Gurudev Ki Jai. Let me focus. I'm not going to look at the comments for a minute. Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtarashatashmad Srila Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtarashatashmad Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtarashatashmad Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtarashatashmad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitila Pravishta Mahā-Bhagavat Srila Goksharas Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitila Pravishta Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Nitila Pravishta Vaiṣṇavas Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Shara Gosai Prabhu Ki Jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Vraja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Sarva Abhishta Pradata Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Radha Kunda Shama Kund Ki Jai. Shri Mona Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya Ki Jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaiṣṇava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Pṛthu Mahārāja Ki Jai. Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaiṣṇava Vrinda Ki Jai. Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Satyavatai Namo Namaha Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavat Pranams Madhavi Didi, Rukmanjari Didi, Pujimna Prabhu, Indira Mataji. Oh, and Pujimna Prabhu is saying, Dandavat Pranams Indira Mataji. Pujimna Prabhu is asking, don't forget to verify if we in Gaudiya Vaishnavism can worship Lord Narayan. Okay, I'm not like any big authority and I don't know all the perfect things to say, but you can, I think a good place to go is in Chaitanya Charitamrita when Mahaprabhu goes to South India and Mahaprabhu, Gopal Bhatta Goswami's family. What are all their names? Prabodhananda Saraswati was there. What is the brother's name? Oh God, how do I forget? Anyhow, go to this part in South India when Mahaprabhu stayed at the home of, oh God, I have such a terrible memory. But anyways, in that home of, was it Venkatabhatta? I think it was Venkatabhatta. I don't know. When he stayed in their house for 4 months during Chaturmasya, that's a good place to look. And Mahaprabhu, he turns them all into, they were worshipping Lakshmi Narayan, but then he converts them and turns them towards worshipping Radha and Krishna. So we can, there's nothing wrong for a Vaishnav to worship Lord Narayan, but especially in our line, we give all focus to Radha and Krishna. That's our ultimate goal. And if we get too into worshipping Narayan and Lakshmi Devi, then we might be on our way to Vaikuntha. But we want to go beyond Vaikuntha. We want to go to Goloka Vrindavan. So, yeah. What is it? Sri Ramanuja Sampradaya to Gaudiya Sampradaya. I don't understand the question. But yeah, go read that part of Chaitanya Charitamrita and that will make everything very clear. Alright, Haribol, Dandavat Pranams.